One of the reasons why this week's Parsha is called Chayei Sara, meaning the life of Sarah, even though the entire Parsha deals with after Sarah's death and how her family moved on after she passed away, is because Sarah had a very unique perspective, an approach to life, even relative to her husband Avrohom. And it's that perspective and influence that, although she physically passed away, only grew after her death. The imprint of her life and what she stood for, we see affected her family much stronger after her death, even more than during her lifetime. What was this unique perspective of Sarah relative to Avrohom? Well, we see one difference and debate between them in previous Parshas. It's relative to Avroham's first son, Yishmael. Yishmael was born to Hagar, and Avrohom, when Hashem promised him will have a second son with his wife Sarah, Avrohom said, I don't need it. Lu Yishmael yichya lefanecha. If only Yishmael will find favor in your eyes, I don't need the second son. Avrohom was very inclusive of his son, Yishmael. Sarah, on the other hand, when her son was born, Yitzchak, the father of the Jewish people, and Yishmael was misbehaving, said, get this boy out of the house. He doesn't belong here with my son Yitzchak. And Avrohom was perturbed and bothered by that. Avrohom had a much more inclusive perspective to his son Yishmael, and by definition to all the nations of the world. Avrohom was called Av Hamayim Goyim, the father of all nations, the one called upon to bring godliness and the recognition of the one God to the whole world. Sarah, on the other hand, represented the exact opposite. Not the inclusion of everyone, but the exclusivity and the exclusiveness of a Jew, that in the space and the home of a Jew, Yishmael does not belong. So during the lifetime, we see a bit of a clash of those ideas. After Sarah passes away, we see Avrohom somewhat concedes to Sarah's perspective. It was time for her to be buried. She was going to be buried in Maras HaMachpelah, which is where Adam and Chava, the father and mother of humanity, are born. But he can't just bury her there. He has to buy rights to Maras HaMachpelah. It has to become exclusively his. It's not enough just to bury her next to the father and mother of humanity. Avram notices that for Sarah to be buried there, this has to become a only uniquely Jewish cemetery. Then it's time to find a wife for his son Yitzchak. Eliezer, his servant, would like that Yitzchak marry his daughter. And Avram says, Yitzchak cannot marry out of the family. He is blessed, you are cursed, and blessed can't get married with cursed. Again, we see Avram conceding to this exclusivity, that Yitzchak should remain within the Jewish blood and shouldn't marry out to Eliezer. Who was right in this debate between Avram and Sarah? Hashem tells Avraham, yes, Yishmael should not be in the same home, should not be in the same space as Yitzchak. Even if it hurts you, what Sarah is saying is correct, and listen to her. And we see that Avram, even after Sarah's death, continues on this perspective of noticing the exclusive space of the Jew where Yishmael does not belong, somewhat against his grain. Now, these two ideas of Avraham being inclusive to the world around, and Sarah being exclusive and appreciating the unique Maila of the Jew, are not at odds with each other. They're not at all a clash. In fact, one enhances the other. If I'm inclusive and affecting everyone before noticing what I have special, then I'm not really offering anything. Let's give an example of this. A parent, it's a trend in America or in secular societies that some parents are called by their first name by their kids and don't uphold any dignity or boundaries between parent and child. That is very harmful for the child, because the child needs parents to give him morality, to give him maturity, to give him what the child doesn't have. If the parent is just like the child, that's not what the child needs. The child needs parents, which means he needs people that are at a higher, more objective, more purposeful level than him, and to influence and teach and educate that child with something that the child does not have. And if when the parents just break those boundaries and say, yeah, we're one of you, well, there's no boundaries between us, call us whatever you want, they are saying, we have nothing you don't have. So then they have nothing left to give that child. Or if teachers have no boundaries with their students and are just buddy-buddy without upholding any dignity, is the way of telling the child, I have nothing real to offer you, I'm just one of you. But the child doesn't need just one of them. The child needs a teacher, which has something, intellect, a perspective that the child does not. The parent has something and should have something that the child does not. That's what the child needs. And if I'm just trying to be one of him, just be inclusive without having any exclusivity, and realizing that I hold something unique and special, means that my impact is going to be very weak and minimal. Or another example would be, let's say, a family who has open doors and brings in guests, and everyone gets to enjoy the vibe of the home. If there's no exclusiveness where the family says, this is our time and we don't have guests right now, and there's no space where the family is just them with no one else, then they're not a family. And eventually the family will fall apart and will not have any special influence on people around them. The family first needs to be secure and unique as we are a family. And now that we're a strong, healthy, loving family, we could share that with the proper boundaries with the guests around us. There's a example of a flashlight and a laser. A flashlight spreads its light, and the more it spreads its light, the weaker it gets. The laser could even be used as weaponry or to cut through for a surgery. Because the laser is specifically anchored and focused, all the photons are focused together, interlocked in one direction. That gives it actually power to make impact. If I don't feel like I'm selling something real, specific, exclusive, and I'm just there I don't want to offend anyone and apologetic for what I have to say, and make sure everyone has space to be exactly as they want, then my light, the further I spread that light, the more feeble and less impactful it gets. With the impact of a laser of, I am me, I'm anchored in something real. I realize that God gave me something exclusively, and now I'm going to go share that. That light will be laser focused and have impactful to cut through and pierce through any barriers, and bring in awareness of Hashem. So if you want to have the Avrohom inclusiveness and realize that you're here to spread the message of God to the world around, you first need to have the exclusiveness and realize that I'm actually the chosen people. And we need to be able to tell ourselves we are the chosen people. God gave us a land. In that space, no one else belongs. It's not because we are special and for egotistic reasons and accomplishments. It's because we had great forefathers and God chose us. He chose us, and that's where it starts and that's where it stops. And if I'm ashamed to say that because I feel like I'm going to offend people, then that means that my anchoring in God is weak, and therefore I can't really bring godliness to people. I have to first realize that I do have a God that chose me to now share that exclusive message to the rest of the world. So that's lesson number 1 that we could learn from Sarah. That there is a space where we say, yes, we are Hashem's chosen people, and we shouldn't be ashamed to say that. We could say Eretz Yisrael is the land that Hashem gave the Jews, and we should not be ashamed to say that. We have a small part of planet Earth that God did give us exclusively, and that's not to be shared. And when we are truly anchored in ourselves as being Hashem's people, we're truly anchored in the full Eretz Yisrael, then we have the godliness we need to now bring in Avram's message to share that confidently and strongly, like the laser, to the rest of the world. Have a great Shabbos.